Welcome back to another edition of Real Recognizes Real. I am your host, Charles Simpson, and we got a fun episode today. This is our first interview that we've done for Real Recognizes Real, and this is going to be a special one. Without further ado, I just really want to get right on into it. The guy to my right here, I'm just going to list off a couple of his accolades up to this point. He is a former 4-year starting linebacker at Bluffton University. Along his coaching journey, currently he's a coach. Along the coaching journey, he's made stops at Montana Tech as the defensive back coach, linebackers coach at Lake Erie College in Colorado Mesa, defensive assistant at Morehead State, safeties coach at Notre Dame College, and is currently the defensive line coach in Titletown at Valdosta State. And he's a close friend of mine, which I feel like is the most important of this entire thing here. Coach Gino Spadaro. Gino, how are you feeling today?
I'm good, Trill. I'm good. How are you doing, man?
I can't complain, man. It's crazy. It feels like, and for you guys out there too, Gino was one of my teammates early on in high school. We played football together, and then for the real behind the scenes, when I first started Real Recognizes Real, he's one of the pioneers that was right there with me. So mentioned that he went to Bluffton, got the journalism degree there, so he was right there with me along the way. It's kind of crazy how we went from that to now. You just kind of hear all of your accolades, like everywhere you've been, all these stops. Like it's just crazy how fast time is just flying by.
Yeah, no doubt, man. No doubt. I remember when we first started that as well. Um, initially that was the path that I thought I was gonna go down after college, but you know, just kind of fell in love with football to the point where I wanted to keep it, in my life. But now, um, definitely, a lot of good memories back then, man. A lot of good memories back in the day. High school, college, all of those times, man. I think about those daily for
Yeah.
sure.
No, for sure. And it's crazy, but let's get on right into it here. Let's just talk a little bit about the journey. So, obviously I mentioned all of your stops along the way, and right now, you have the ability to coach in a national championship game at the D2 level, but just kind of given, all of the stops that you've taken to this point, what would you say has been, a couple of the biggest things that you've learned, up until this point that have put you in a position to be such a, pivotal part of what you guys are doing down there in Titletown at Valdosta State?
Yeah, I've learned a lot in my career up to this point. Um, when I first started coaching, I was 22 years old, fresh out of college. I was the same age as a lot of my players at Montana Tech, um, and I didn't know nothing. You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't know much of anything. I thought I knew a lot. Thought I had started for 4 years at Bluffton and played a lot of football, and I thought I thought I knew it all, but I really knew nothing in the grand scheme of things. I've been in a lot of different defenses. Obviously, like you said, I've been at Montana Tech, Lake Erie College, um, Colorado Mesa, Morehead State, Notre Dame College, and here. And everywhere's been different. Colorado Mesa and here, my first couple years here, we were running the same things. But I've been in a bunch of different schemes and coached every position, and I've seen success. But what I've learned is it all works from a schematic standpoint and all of those things. Everybody does the same things, and whether you're 4-3 or 3-4 or three high safeties, everybody's playing cover four, and it works out the same way. And everybody's playing cover three and cover one, and the everybody's got a gap to fit, and it all works. The one thing that I've learned, I'm going into my ninth year now, as a coach. The one thing that I've learned as a coach is that passion and care is number one. I think you have to have your heart in the right place. You have to love football. You've got to care about football. You got to care about your players, and you got to love your players. And ultimately, if your mind is and your heart is working towards helping those people and competing on the football field and working to get your guys degrees and all of that, as long as your mind and your heart are in those places, I think that's the first thing that matters, because there's people out there that aren't thinking about those things, whatever they're thinking about, um, and you can see that it doesn't work out, because this is ultimately built off of relationships, and you got to care about the people that you're around, and ultimately you just got to have a passion for what you're doing. With that being said, though, you got to believe in something, and you got to stand for something as a coach. There's got to be standards and expectations, and those can't move around a whole bunch. There's got to be something that you believe in and that you stand for, and you got to hold people to that, whatever it is. There's a bunch of different things that people do, that coaches do at programs all across the country. Everybody does something a little bit differently, but at the end of the day, you got to have something that you're trying to get accomplished, and you got to be able to deliver that to your program, to the people that you're around. You got to be able to get up in front of the team and speak to them, and deliver a clear and concise message to them, in which they're not confused about what the standard is. You got to do that. And then I think you got to be able to put the program first, as a coach. Like, this is a very demanding job, just from my instance, from my experience. If you want to win and you want to be great at if you want to have a great football program, the program's got to come first. You can't be half football coach and half whatever else you're doing. Like, you got to be all into this and to your guys, and you gotta spend time on this stuff. There is time as a coach to, like, there is free time. Like, there is time that you get to go do other things and to relax and think about other things, for sure. But, like, I've seen it in this profession. There's coaches that, you know, have other things that they like to do outside of the program that kind of get in the way at times,
Yeah,
and
for sure.
of getting away. You got to be able to put the program first. And I've been there too. I started at 22 years old, and I had a lot of problems at 22, and 23, just, throughout the years. But, eventually, I feel like I've came a long way, and you got to be able to put the program first. And if you're trying to have true success, and, and do the things that you want to do.
No, for sure. And I think a big part of that is, obviously it's the X's and O's on the field and getting the game plans together and things like that. But I think another big part of that as well is your roster construction. And with that said, from our end here, Real recognizes real. Like, we do a lot of film study. We look at guys that are already having success at the college level who are trying to get it to translate over to the NFL side of things. For you, though, as a coach, this is going to be a two-part question here. But for you as a coach, when you're looking at these guys' film coming out of high school versus coming out of the portal, the guys that have a little bit more experience, whether it be at a lower level moving up or at a higher level moving down, what are some of the things that you're looking for in these guys? And is it anything different from, recruiting the high school guys versus the portal guys?
I mean, it's definitely different when you're recruiting a transfer versus a high school kid. Um, you're looking for the same things. You're looking for, athleticism, physicality, violence, change of direction, quick twitch, motor, finish. Like, those types. You're looking for all of that, and it varies on what type of, the position that you're looking at as well. I think when you're recruiting a transfer, for me personally, I'm watching his tape, and it's all predicated on who's the competition first and foremost. If he's doing things on tape at the Division I level, to me, I think I can expect that type of production and, that type of play right now at this level, for the most part. But Division II is high level football, and so
Absolutely.
I think that, one of the biggest mistakes that some players make from Division I down here is thinking, "Oh, I'm from a Division I and I'm going to go ball at Valdosta State," and they find out that it's not that simple here, because we got really good football players here. Um, but if for example, if a kid is making plays against Ole Miss on his tape, I have got to believe that he's going to come down here to Division II level and make plays, against whoever we're playing. Um, same thing goes for a Division II transfer. You're looking at the type of competition that he's going against, and you're trying to gauge, can this kid come here and give us that type of production right now, or not, or are there flashes on tape? Because I'm looking for that as well. If a kid's not an absolute baller, and just making play after play after play on tape, I'm looking for a couple flashes within that tape as well. That can I coach that flash to consistency, to every single play, and so I'm looking for those things as well. High school guys, I'm watching their tape, and some high school kids, like this year, we're bringing in a really good high school class that I think that some kids might be able to help us right now. But I'm looking at their tape saying, all right, can this kid do what he's doing in the high school level here at this level in a couple years? Do I think that this kid has the frame, and more importantly, what it really comes down to is the work ethic and the mentality. Do I think that this kid can come in here and develop in a year or two? And so when it comes to that, the development piece, I'm really confident in myself. I think, I know um, I know the things that can translate to the players, and I can teach things to guys, and give them the things that they need to be great. But what I've learned going into my ninth year is these guys got to have the mentality and the mindset to want to do this for real. If you want to be great at football, you can't just say you want to be great at football and not put extra work in, or not take extra time to perfect your craft. You got to work, at this stuff, and it can't just be the couple hours with me at the facility. You gotta be thinking about this type of stuff, and for yourself to be the best that you can be. You got to be working on it constantly outside of the facility and all that. And
Hmm.
um, so I think another thing that has really been a big part of the recruiting is, especially when it comes to transfers, but also high school kids, is talking to their coaches that at the previous school, just to see what type of kid they are, because we don't want to bring a guy in that doesn't love football, that doesn't love the work, that has issues, that are outside of the game, or whatever, off the field. We don't need to be dealing with that type of stuff. So, ultimately, getting a good reference from a another coach as well goes a long way. That way we kind of know that we're bringing in the right type of guys that have that mentality, because that's the one thing that's not in my control at all as a coach. That's the one thing that kind of stinks as a coach is, ultimately it's how bad does this kid want it? I'm going to push him. I'm going to hold him accountable and do those types of things. But ultimately, it's his life, and it's his future, and he's got to want to do great things with it. And so those are things that we talk about here as well, as being a self starter, and being intrinsically motivated, to be great, because you're not going to have a coach just kicking you in the butt all your life, telling you to get going. You're going to have to tell
Right.
yourself to get going.
No, for sure. I think that's an interesting kind of way to view that, because you talk a lot about the mentality, and obviously, like, you can try and push kids to ultimately get the most out of themselves, but at some point they have to want it for themselves. But on the flip side of that, outside of just getting the kids that mentally fit what you're looking for, obviously with today's day and age, like, it's different from when we were in college. Like when you went to Bluffton, you weren't thinking about, oh, I can go have a couple good years, hit the portal, and be on the up and up, or I can go to this school and make some money, put some money in my pocket, and still play ball and kind of go from there. With that being said, with how today's day and age is with college football, how the portal is, and how NIL is, ultimately, what's your approach to making sure you're getting guys that are coming to Valdosta State for the right reasons, and not just necessarily chasing money or chasing, that next step? Because obviously you guys have that reputation at Valdosta that you guys are going to win, whether it be, win the conference every year, or it's, go compete for a national championship, every few years or whatever the case may be. Like, how do you make sure that you're getting guys that aren't just potentially using you for a stepping stone as opposed to building culture and making sure they fit what you guys are trying to do for the future?
Yeah, I mean, that's a hard conversation to avoid. You kind of got to embrace that, in my opinion. You don't talk about it once the guys are here or anything like that, whatsoever. At least I don't. But it's hard because at Valdosta State, it's the history of this program, coaches and players. There's been a Kirby Smart used to coach here, Will Muschamp. The air raid offense was created here by, Mike Leach and Hal Mummy. And so coaches have used this place as a stepping stone to greatness, and also players have too. And it's all over the place. You see how much money these guys are making at the Power Four level, and even the Group of Five level, and even at some FCS schools. We don't have any of that here. None of it. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like most of our guys got to pay to go to school here a little bit, and so when it comes to that, what I tell guys is ultimately, if you come to Valdosta State and you're focused and you have the right mentality and you're intrinsically motivated and you're trying to be great and you're one of the best players in the country at your position, you're going to make a lot of money, whether that's at another school or whether that's in the NFL. That's happened. That's the history of the program. Everybody can look that up and see what happens to our players when they take care of business here and are thinking about the right things. So if you're just coming here and thinking, oh, I'm gonna get in and out, you're probably not gonna be in and out, because you're probably gonna be the same guy that ain't going hard in workouts. But if you come in here and attack every single day and you just think about getting better every single day, that'll happen. It'll happen, and then we're gonna have to replace them, and that's part of it. And everybody's got to do that, unless you're at Georgia or Ole Miss or Ohio State or LSU or whatever. Everybody's kind of got the same problem. The best player at Kent State is probably going to get recruited by somebody. It's everybody's kind of got to deal with it, and you got to embrace it. But it makes recruiting tough, because every year it's hard. It's hard work in recruiting. It's not. You can't just bring in you can't just bring in a freshman class and expect them to be there the next 4 years, and you never really could. But especially now, you bring a freshman class in and you hope to get 2 to 3 years out of them,
Yeah.
And so, but it's kind of it's the name of the game right now. And it just is what it is. Ultimately, if a kid comes in here and balls out, one of my guys, if I have a freshman that comes in here and in 2 years he gets $700,000 from Florida, I'll feel like I did a good job.
For sure.
I'll feel like I helped that kid. And so ultimately it is what it is, and you embrace it. You got to accept that, in my opinion.
No, for sure. And I think that's a great little segue into kind of what I wanted to bring up next here, is because you talk about creating a path for yourself to move forward and having success at Valdosta State, and, getting that opportunity to move up to the next level. One of the guys I wanted to bring up is actually going to be in this year's draft class right now, who had a crazy Senior Bowl, and that's Georgia Southern's receiver, Ted Hurst. Because before he went down to Georgia State, he was a Blazer. I know you were there, while he was there his last year at Valdosta State. Could you just tell me a little bit about, what you saw from him back then, where you knew he would be in a position to have this kind of success now? Because you've always been on the defensive side of things. So every day at practice, you were trying to put forth, I'm sure, game plans to slow him down and things like that. And I'm sure he was giving you guys a great look for whoever you were going up against. So talk to me a little bit more about Ted Hurst and what you saw from him while he was there, and go into that a little bit for me.
Yeah, Ted can do it all, man. Ted is long, athletic, physical, can go up and high point the football. Obviously being on the defensive side of the ball, going against him every day, you're right, especially in the red zone and things like that. He was making plays, in practice for sure against us. And, you always knew that Ted was going to be a really good player for us. It was definitely a mismatch for the corners out there. And when he went to Georgia State, I knew right away. I said he's going to have success there, and hopefully God willing blow up. And that's what it looks like is happening for him. He's always worked hard. He's always been about the right things, kind of like what I said. If you come here and you're just taking care of business and going to work every single day and trying to be the best version of you, good things will happen. And he's an example of that for sure. But I remember against West Florida in 2023, we were losing. It was the last drive of the game, and we were about like on the 30-yard line going in, and they were playing cover 1 or cover 3. It was single high defense, and we threw a post to Ted, and that's like the one route that you shouldn't throw against one high coverage, And
Right.
Ted went up against over 2 people and won us the game against West Florida, and so it was plays like that you could see in 2023 that you knew that he was going to be a big time player. Obviously, if he would have stayed here, he would have, been huge for us. But I think it's pretty cool seeing guys like him go to bigger universities and kind of represent what we do down here at Valdosta State, which is high level football. You know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's a cool thing to see because I know me and you have kind of, talked about it because I've been watching Ted's film, and just to give you guys a little spoiler, later on down, the throughout this season, Ted Hurst will be one of our film studies where we will be going through his film at Georgia Southern, figuring out, what he does well. Cause I do think he's one of those, diamonds in the rough per se. Obviously, he's more of a household name now after showing out at the Senior Bowl, but we absolutely will be, reviewing his film later on this season. Now, with that said, like obviously this was a guy who was on your team. I kind of want to get into a guy who wasn't on your team because I will admittedly say you put me onto the map of this next guy that we're going to talk about here, and that's Trinidad Chambliss. In 2024, Valdosta State making it to the national championship game, and you're watching film and you're like, hey, this Trinidad Chambliss quarterback from Ferris State, he is the real deal. He's keeping me up. I'm watching the film. He's a hell of a player to game plan for. And obviously, we saw the success that he had this past year at Ole Miss, and him doing it in the SEC, is incredible. But let's not, act like Ferris State and Valdosta State still isn't high level football there as well. Just talk to me a little bit about what you saw from him on field, kind of game planning for that game, and even the national championship game in itself that made you just know that hey, this kid's going to be a problem to handle, and he absolutely can do it at the next level up as well.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing that he's got a cool name. So I think that was the first thing that I saw was the name. I said, he's got to be good, and so, but no, then you cut the tape on it, and the dude can do it all. I mean, he could run, he could throw the football at all levels, quick game, intermediate play action, deep ball. He could throw on the run. He could take hits. Against Pitt State, the first game of their season, they lost the first game of the year in 2024. Pitt State beat them 19-3, I believe, and he got hit. He got the crap hit out of him a couple times in that game, and you could just see how he would get up and keep things moving forward, and so you could see his toughness as well. But in the game, in the national championship game, I mean, the first play of the game, they ran him on a counter, and he broke it, about 50 yards or so. Could have scored, but luckily we tripped him up. And we were really fast and athletic on defense, and he made us look slow. He made us look not athletic, and he took advantage for the first time all year that year. He was a guy that if you took a bad first step, or if you took a bad angle, or if you had bad eyes and he got the angle on you, it was over with, and he was going to make you pay. And you could see that on tape going into the game. I was on 1,000 with the D line that week talking about you cannot make mistakes versus this team because they will make you pay
Mm-hmm.
every single time. And that's what the really good teams do. And that's what the really good players do. And so when you saw him do that live in real time in the national championship game, just make us pay for bad mistakes on his feet with his legs or throwing the football, because he threw a couple touchdown passes as well. Um, it just it was no surprise seeing him do what he did at Ole Miss. I was not shocked whatsoever seeing him go to Ole Miss and seeing him get on the field and have the success that he had, because ultimately quarterback, you got to be a good football player, 1,000%. You got to be able to do all the things that a quarterback needs to be able to do. Once you can do that, if you get put around 10 other SEC level football players, you're probably going to have similar success. And so I wasn't surprised when he went to Ole Miss, because you plop him, surrounded by 10 other, 4 or 5 stars. Yeah. I mean, all he's got to do is get the ball to the right people and make the right reads. He can do that for sure. And so, no, he's going to be a really good. I mean, he just got the year back again for next year. So I think that'll be cool seeing him play another year. And I think he'll have a lot of success in the NFL. I think if somebody gives him a shot, which he'll get a shot, I think he'll have a lot of success, because you could tell that he's wired the right way too. I've never talked to him in person or personally, but just seeing him in interviews and just the way that he carries himself, that's the stuff that I'm talking about, is the mentality,
Right.
and the intrinsic motivation. And do you want to be great? Are you going to put the work in? And it seems like he's a guy that likes to do that. And so he seems like a guy that's going to have success wherever he's at.
No, for sure. And I just always, when we talked about, because I on my other podcast, Coast to Coast, we talked about, Ole Miss before the season started, and I was telling the guys, I was like, look, I'm hip to this guy Trinidad Chambliss now, because I got to see him play a little bit. Like, I've gotten the scoop on him, so it's kind of cool to just see from that perspective. Like, even the year before, he blows up and things like that. Like, you kind of see, and that kind of goes to what you were saying earlier, where if you show it on tape, like somebody will find you, and as long as you have that right mindset, like you can get noticed, you can go up, and the sky's the limit. Ultimately there for you now. With that said, there though, just thinking about the sky being the limit there. Obviously, kids have their dreams. Everybody wants to play at the highest level, and just with that, everybody's just looking for an opportunity. Gene, I see you out there. Like, I remember when you had like 300 followers or so on Twitter, and on Instagram, and now you got more followers than basically all of our friends now. Kids always in your DMs looking for an opportunity and things like that. Just kind of talking to, this is more so for the high school kids, but just kind of talking to them, what can they do to stand out, as opposed to just sending you a DM? Like, what can high school kids ultimately do to get put on your radar and, ultimately potentially be given a shot, later down the line?
I mean, ultimately, they just gotta work to be the best version of themselves and show it on tape. Like that's the biggest thing. I'm looking at high school kids. And for us down at Valdosta State, we're looking at guys in Georgia, Florida, Alabama, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Tennessee, and just in state and states that border our state, for the most part. And ultimately, if the kid is a good football player and he shows that on tape, we're gonna be looking at them, and we're gonna be interested in them for sure. Ultimately, I think it's tough right now in today's climate with all the transferring and all the everybody wants the transfer portal guys, and these high school kids are getting overlooked. I think more than ever, they've got to be taking bets on themselves, and just understand that you might not get the Division I offer that you're looking for out of high school. You might not. That's going to be really hard nowadays, in today's climate. You got to be a really, really, really good football player to get a Division I offer out of high school. And so ultimately, if you get a Division II offer, if you get an NAIA offer, if you get something where your school is paid for or close to that, I think as long as you believe in yourself and you believe that you're a good football player and that you're worth some money and things like that, eventually it'll come. But ultimately they got to believe in themselves because it's really hard right now with high school kids. I've seen a lot of really really good high school players with not a lot of college interest just because of the transfer portal, and so they do get one school or even two schools. They got to really bet on themselves, and that might be the path for at least the first couple of years.
No, for sure. I mean, again, I like to ask questions like that, especially because everyone's looking for that next opportunity, like out of high school. Like I remember vividly when we were in high school, like everyone's talking about, I just want this offer, or I want to this camp, or things like that. So it's important to bet on yourselves there. But I'm sure there's definitely some high school kids that will appreciate the inside and just realize that may be the way or the avenue for him moving forward there. But Gene, I appreciate you stopping by, man, taking some time out, talking some ball with me. And it's always fun to catch up, especially you're talking about ball and your journey along the way here. One thing I did want to close out here, final question, and it's another two-parter because it kind of has to be here. You got spring ball fastly approaching. I'm sure you guys are already starting to do some stuff there at Valdosta State, just with what you guys want to accomplish, this upcoming season. But with that said, what are you hoping to see from your guys this upcoming spring? And give us a little preview about, what we should be expecting from the Blazers this upcoming fall.
Yeah, for the spring, I think the biggest thing is we got a lot of new guys in here right now for the spring. A lot of new guys, ton of them, and especially in my group with the defensive line. So the biggest thing that I want to see from them is just we talk about it, love for three things: love for the game, love for each other, and love for the process. And I want to see do these guys have that? Do these guys love the game of football? Are they going to be willing to spend time with each other and get to know one another and develop a good bond and chemistry? Because that's really important with D line, especially. D line's got to be a close group, and we got to be able to get after people and get through adversity together. And so that's really important. And then the process, is kind of all encompassing. There's going to be a lot of things that happen from now to the season. A lot of things that we don't even know are going to happen yet. There's going to be adversity that happens, and I just want to see, are they willing to fight through that type of stuff? And if they love the game and they love each other, the answer will be yes to that last question. So that's what I'm looking for more than anything. Obviously, with having a bunch of new guys, we got to see if we can play football. But I think if we love this stuff and we're a tight group, I think the football will handle itself. And so, but obviously, we're going to have to learn the scheme and work on our technique. That's going to be every single day from now until the end of the season. We're going to have to fine tune our technique and get better at kind of understanding what we're doing from a defensive standpoint, just because they are new and this is a new defense for a lot of these guys. And so, that's kind of what we're working through right now. But I want to see them come together more than anything. And then we're going to have to do the same thing again when all these freshmen get here in the summertime. But we got to have a foundation built for going into the summer, in my opinion. But going into next year, I'm excited. I think, I think it'll be a good group. I think these guys like to work. Just seeing them from, as of right now, they like to get after it. They're coachable, and so. Ultimately, we want to be the best version of us. We want to finish the end of the season the best version that we can possibly be. We won't know what we are until the end of the season, you know. But obviously, we have high expectations here and high goals. Like we want to win the whole thing. Like we talk about that all the time. But we got to just be working every day to be the best version of ourselves so we can get there.
Oh, for sure. And I'm expecting big things this year. We always are. It's fun following you, and I know you share a link with us every week to the games. And some games are going to be on ESPN and ESPN partners and things like that. So definitely looking forward to this upcoming season. See what you guys got out there, and wishing you all the success along the way. Again, I can't thank you enough for stopping by, talking a little bit of ball with me on here. And who knows, maybe down the line we can, instead of just chopping it up about just different topics, maybe we can actually do a little film breakdown there, talk about why certain guys are having success and things like that on film. But again, Gene, thank you so much for joining us, and definitely wishing you guys the best of luck this upcoming season.
No doubt, Terrell. I appreciate you having me. This was a good time for sure, man.
Absolutely. And I appreciate all you guys stopping by, watching the episode. Again, this was a special one. Told you guys, Gino is one of my good friends here, and, first actual interview that we've done on Real Recognizes Real. So it was a fun one. Appreciate you guys stopping by and listening. Next week, we will get back to our normal film study, and we'll start breaking down, some of the top guys in the draft class. So again, thank you so much, and look forward to see you guys again next week.